In the quiet town of Vandalia, Illinois, a case already weighed down by heartbreak has taken another unexpected turn. As investigators continue working to understand what happened to 14-year-old Kylie Toberman, attention is now shifting toward her adoptive mother, Donna Toberman. New information has surfaced, not because of the primary investigation, but because someone close to the family finally decided to speak out. Authorities say Donna Toberman is now facing several misdemeanor charges for possessing multiple firearms without a required FOID card. While these charges are not directly tied to Kylie's death, they were triggered by a tip from someone who knows the household better than most. Paige Stone, the estranged wife of Arnold Rivera Jr., the man currently facing charges connected to Kylie's case. Paige says Kylie's death compelled her to step forward with information she had kept silent for too long. Her decision wasn't only about the weapons. It was rooted in years of fear, concern, and warnings she claims were overlooked. Paige describes troubling conditions inside the Toberman home and says her daughter told her that Kylie had expressed concerns months before tragedy struck. Tonight, we look beyond the surface of the firearm charges and into the deeper story Paige is now revealing, one involving early warnings, a confession she says she heard firsthand, and questions about whether the systems meant to protect vulnerable children failed. Kylie. This is the latest chapter in a case that continues to shake the Vandalia community, and the answers are far from complete. As investigators continued piecing together the events surrounding Kylie Toberman's final days, attention shifted toward a different figure inside the household, her adoptive mother, Donna Toberman. What began as a separate inquiry unrelated to Kylie's death quickly grew into a point of interest when authorities discovered several firearms inside Donna's home, raising new questions about what was happening behind closed doors. According to the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, investigators located 3 pistols and a .22 caliber rifle during a search of the property. The issue wasn't the firearms themselves, but the fact that Donna allegedly possessed them without the required FOID card, a legal necessity for firearm ownership in Illinois. These findings formed the basis for multiple misdemeanor charges now filed against her. Law enforcement emphasized that these charges do not connect directly to the investigation into Kylie's death. Instead, they emerged as a side case, one that only came to light because someone intimately familiar with the family reached out to authorities. That person was Paige Stone, the estranged wife of the man charged in connection to Kylie's case, and her involvement reshaped the direction of the inquiry. Paige's decision to speak out came after years of silence, fear, and internal conflict. She had once been deeply tied to the Toberman household, both through marriage and her children. For her, the new charges were not just about firearms. They were a symbol of the deeper concerns she had long harbored about the living environment surrounding her children and, ultimately, Kylie. Paige's connection to the case stretches back to when she first met Arnold Rivera Jr., the man now charged in Kylie's case. She was only 14 years old at the time, hired to babysit while Rivera was married with 2 children. She recalls those early encounters as the beginning of a long and complicated relationship defined by imbalance, manipulation, and control. By the age of 17, Paige was pregnant with Rivera's child. She says he took her out of state to Utah to marry, exploiting legal loopholes that allowed him to control the situation. She now reflects on that period as one where he used her age and vulnerability to his advantage, setting the stage for years of instability and emotional strain. 6 years ago, Paige filed for divorce. She explains that she didn't leave her children behind, but rather left what she describes as an unhealthy and harmful relationship. Her children remained with Rivera and his mother, Donna Toberman, in Vandalia. It was in this environment that Kylie eventually became part of the extended household, connected to the family through proximity and shared spaces. Paige says the conditions inside the home were alarming. She recalls entering the house and finding it full of dogs, dog feces, and dog urine, an environment she believed was unsafe for any child. These concerns deepened when her daughter began sharing things she had heard from Kylie, observations that suggested troubling dynamics involving Rivera and the young girl. According to Paige, her daughter told her that Kylie had expressed specific concerns that Paige took seriously enough to report. She contacted DCFS on January 21st to alert them, hoping her warning would prompt an investigation. But she later said she felt her report was brushed aside, leaving her worried about what might happen if no one intervened. DCFS later released a public statement acknowledging the tragedy of Kylie's death and expressing sympathy for her loved ones. They clarified that Kylie had been adopted in 2018 and was therefore no longer in their care. They also stated that Rivera was not considered Kylie's guardian and did not live in the same home, a detail intended to explain the limits of their involvement. However, Paige disputes the idea that Rivera was distant from the household. She says he was living in an RV positioned directly next to the home, close enough to interact with Kylie and remain involved in daily activities. To Paige, this proximity meant the risk she reported was still very real, regardless of who was legally responsible for Kylie at the time. These discrepancies between official statements and Paige's first-hand experiences formed the foundation of her distrust toward the system. She says she felt isolated, unheard, and powerless, especially when her concerns seemed to vanish into bureaucracy. When Kylie later died, Paige believed her worst fears had been realized. Paige describes the moment she learned about Kylie's death as devastating, and then, she says, things grew even darker. According to her account, Rivera called her and confessed to what had happened. She recalls hearing his voice say, "I killed Kylie," a moment that left her collapsing to the floor, overwhelmed by shock and grief. This alleged confession not only shook Paige emotionally, but also strengthened her resolve to step forward. She says she could no longer remain silent after witnessing what she believes was a failure to protect Kylie, especially after she had tried to warn authorities months earlier. For her, speaking out became a way to honor Kylie's memory and push for accountability. In the wake of this, Paige turned over information about firearms she believed Donna Toberman possessed illegally. The discovery of these weapons provided investigators with grounds to file charges, opening a separate legal case that ran parallel to the ongoing investigation into Kylie's death. It became a turning point one Paige hoped would force authorities to take a closer look. To many observers, the timing of the new charges raised questions. Had there been red flags that went unnoticed? Had earlier reports been underestimated? And why did it take a tragedy for authorities to reconnect with Paige's warning? These questions fueled public frustration and deepened scrutiny on how the case had been handled. The charges against Donna were ultimately categorized as misdemeanors, but their significance extended far beyond the legal penalties. They symbolized a crack in the larger narrative, an opening that allowed investigators and the public to re-examine the circumstances around Kylie's final months and the people who were closest to her during that time. Meanwhile, the community of Vandalia found itself grappling with sadness and anger. Many residents wondered how such events could unfold in their town, and whether warning signs had been missed or ignored. The case quickly became not only a personal tragedy, but also a local reckoning with issues of oversight, communication, and responsibility. For Paige, the situation remains deeply personal. She says her goal is not revenge, but clarity and justice for a girl she believes was failed by the system. By coming forward with her story, she hopes to ensure that no one can dismiss or overlook the warnings that preceded Kylie's death, and that meaningful change might still come from tragedy. As Part 1 closes, what began as a straightforward firearms investigation has opened a much wider conversation about the Toberman household, the people involved, and the unanswered questions surrounding Kylie's final months. The case continues to evolve, and the next chapters focus on understanding not just what happened, but whether it could have been prevented. As investigators continued examining the firearms case linked to Donna Toberman, they also revisited timelines surrounding the months before Kylie's death. Each detail, each account, added a new layer to a story already shaped by warning signs, personal conflicts, and long-standing tension within the household. A key focus became understanding how Kylie's concerns first surfaced. According to Paige, Kylie spoke openly to her daughter about interactions and situations that made her uneasy. These conversations were not vague or passing remarks. They were detailed enough for Paige to believe immediate intervention was necessary. Paige's report to DCFS on January 21st was her attempt to alert authorities before any harm could come to Kylie. She says she clearly communicated her daughter's concerns, the conditions inside the home, and the presence of Rivera, who she believed still played a major role in daily life despite not being listed as Kylie's guardian. While DCFS acknowledged receiving reports connected to the household, they emphasized that their ability to act was limited. Because Kylie was officially adopted, she was no longer under state supervision, meaning the agency had fewer avenues to conduct checks or open new investigations, unless immediate physical danger could be proven. For Paige, this explanation felt inadequate. She believed the proximity of Rivera, combined with her daughter's warnings, constituted clear risk. She felt her concerns had been acknowledged but not fully understood, and ultimately, she experienced the sinking sensation that her report had simply disappeared into procedure. Investigators began examining whether informal, living arrangements, like Rivera's RV beside the home, might have allowed adults to move in and out of the environment without raising red flags. Such setups can create gaps where oversight becomes blurred, especially when guardianship lines are no longer closely monitored. Community members also began raising questions about whether additional reports had been filed by neighbors or relatives. In small towns like Vandalia, informal concerns often spread quietly, but not all of them reach law enforcement or child protective services in time to make a difference. While authorities have not released details about Kylie's final days, they continued gathering statements from individuals who interacted with the family. Investigators approached the case from multiple angles: the timeline of warnings, the relationships inside the home, and the role proximity may have played during the months leading up to the incident. One point authorities stressed was the importance of distinguishing between legally documented guardianship and practical, day-to-day influence. Even if Rivera was not Kylie's guardian on paper, Paige argued that he still occupied a significant presence in her environment, blurring the lines between official oversight and lived reality. Meanwhile, Donna Toberman's firearm charges became a parallel path investigators followed carefully. Her possession of multiple weapons without legal authorization raised questions about household safety and hinted at deeper issues that might have existed long before the case gained statewide attention. Paige revealed that she had long suspected the presence of firearms in the house. Her decision to disclose this information after Kylie's death came from a renewed push to expose everything she believed could contribute to understanding what happened and what might have been missed. Authorities confirmed that without Paige's tip, the firearm investigation may not have taken place at all. Her involvement became a reminder of how crucial family voices can be in uncovering risks that might otherwise remain hidden, especially in cases where official oversight is limited. At the same time, officials remained cautious, often declining to comment on active portions of the investigation. DCFS, in particular, reiterated that they were cooperating fully with law enforcement and the Child Death Investigation Task Force, aiming to ensure a thorough and transparent process. Yet, despite these reassurances, the incident reignited conversations about systemic gaps, especially in cases involving adopted children, who no longer qualified for regular welfare checks. Advocates noted that adoption does not always guarantee long-term safety, and tragedies like Kylie's highlight areas where policy may need strengthening. As more local residents learned about Paige's earlier warnings, sympathy for her situation grew. Many said it was heartbreaking to imagine coming forward months before a tragedy and feeling as though the danger was not taken seriously enough. Her story resonated deeply with parents across the community. For investigators, every piece of Paige's testimony helped clarify what Kylie may have been experiencing. Although much of the official evidence remained sealed, her statements provided context that shaped the broader narrative of missed warnings and conditions inside a home that may have masked deeper issues. The more Paige spoke, the more she emphasized that her actions were rooted not in bitterness, but in responsibility. She remained adamant that she had tried to protect the children connected to the household and that her involvement now was an attempt to ensure Kylie's story received the attention it deserved. Community members began attending local meetings, discussing how similar warnings could be better handled in the future. Some suggested improved reporting systems. Others recommended clearer communication between agencies when children maintain indirect contact with adults who may pose risks. As the investigation expanded, law enforcement revisited earlier statements, timelines, and environmental factors. The firearm charges remained a small but telling piece of the puzzle, hinting at broader patterns within the Toberman household that needed deeper examination. Part 2 closes on a community searching for clarity and accountability. While investigators continued gathering evidence, the heart of the case remained in the voices of those who tried to raise alarms before tragedy struck. Their warnings now form a crucial bridge between what was known then and what must be understood now. As the parallel investigations moved forward, attention again returned to Rivera's alleged confession. Paige said the phone call came without warning, shattering whatever distance she had managed to build since leaving the relationship. His words, as she remembered them, were clear and delivered with a cold finality that left her struggling to breathe. Paige described collapsing to the floor as the reality of what she was hearing consumed her. For years, she had fought to protect her children from what she believed was a dangerous environment. Now she found herself listening to a moment she had feared might one day come, only far worse than she imagined. Investigators did not publicly confirm whether the alleged confession aligned with recorded statements, but they acknowledged collecting every account connected to the timeline. In cases with overlapping relationships and informal living arrangements, first-hand accounts often help clarify events in ways official documents cannot. Paige's recollection of that call became a central part of her motivation to speak out more broadly. She believed that Kylie's death was not an isolated moment of violence, but the end result of warnings, living conditions, and concerning behaviors that had gathered momentum for months, perhaps even longer. Her public statements reignited local conversation about the Toberman home. Residents who once considered the property unremarkable now looked back on odd details, unusual activity, or isolated concerns they had dismissed at the time. Small towns often hold memories quietly, and this case caused many to revisit what they thought they understood. Authorities, meanwhile, pressed forward with a structured review, interviews, environmental assessments, and a careful reconstruction of the relationships inside the household. They sought to determine not just what happened, but what conditions may have allowed danger to grow unnoticed. When asked publicly, officials maintained a measured tone. They reminded the community that investigations involving minors require careful handling, and that premature conclusions could hinder progress. Still, the weight of the case was impossible to ignore, especially given the emotional accounts from those closest to Kylie. DCFS continued to clarify its position, stating that once a child is adopted, oversight ends except in situations where new immediate threats are verified. This explanation frustrated some community members, who questioned whether adoption should completely end long-term monitoring when past concerns still exist. Advocates pointed out that children in post-adoption situations can sometimes slip through the cracks. While adoption provides stability for many, it can also remove safety checks that might otherwise catch warning signs earlier. Kylie's case became an example critics referenced when arguing for reform. Paige felt this personally. She had raised alarms nearly a year earlier and believed the system should have taken her daughter's concerns more seriously. To her, the tragedy showed that family reports should be met with deeper urgency, especially when the reporter has first-hand knowledge of an individual's past behavior. In interviews, Paige emphasized that she was not trying to shift blame, but to highlight patterns she believed could explain how the situation escalated. She said her warnings were not vague fears, but specific concerns coming directly from Kylie through her daughter concerns she now believes pointed to unfolding danger. As the community processed these revelations, local leaders acknowledged the growing unease. Churches, schools, and counseling centers saw an increase in conversations about safety, communication, and how to respond when a child expresses discomfort or fear, even indirectly. Investigators continued reviewing evidence from the Toberman property. The firearms discovered in Donna's home added context to the environment Kylie lived near. While not tied to the primary case, they helped paint a fuller picture of the household's dynamic and the level of supervision, or lack thereof, within it. Rivera's presence in the RV also remained a major point of interest. Investigators sought to determine how frequently he was near Kylie and whether there were signs of tension or conflict visible to others. RV living arrangements often fall outside traditional reporting structures, making oversight more difficult. Authorities revisited digital records, call logs, and communications between members of the household. They aimed to establish a timeline, not just of events, but of conversations, warnings, and behavioral shifts that could help explain what led to Kylie's final hours. As various threads of the case came together, it became clear the story was far more complex than a single moment. The overlapping relationships between Paige, Rivera, Donna, the children, and Kylie created a web of influence that required investigators to examine both history and present circumstances. Local reporters covering the story noted that Paige's voice brought a human dimension to a case otherwise defined by legal filings and official statements. Her story personalized the tragedy, shifting it from a distant news event to a deeply emotional account rooted in years of lived experience. Paige said she hoped her involvement would prevent future cases from being dismissed or overlooked. She believed children should have multiple channels to express concerns, and that adults familiar with a child's environment should be encouraged and taken seriously when they raise alarms. While investigators continued analyzing Paige's statements, they also prepared for ongoing interviews with additional family members. Every voice, they said, had the potential to clarify the chronology of events and reveal moments where intervention might have been possible. Part 3 ends on a community grappling with a difficult truth. The tragedies sometimes form slowly, through overlooked signals and broken communication. As the investigation pressed forward, the weight of those lost warnings continued to shape both the search for answers and the pursuit of justice for Kylie. As the investigation widened, community conversations grew louder. Residents across Vandalia began questioning how a sequence of warnings, concerns, and environmental red flags could accumulate without stronger intervention. Kylie's case became a mirror reflecting weaknesses in oversight systems and communication channels meant to protect vulnerable children. These discussions often centered on the gap between legal guardianship and lived reality. Although Rivera was not officially Kylie's guardian, Paige's account suggested he may have held influence within the household. Such gray areas complicated the investigation and fueled public frustration about unclear oversight boundaries. Law enforcement reiterated that the investigation was ongoing and that every detail from living conditions to personal testimonies would be examined closely. Their statements aimed to reassure the community that no piece of evidence, however small, would be overlooked in the search for clarity and accountability. The discovery of firearms in Donna Toberman's home remained a parallel concern. Though unrelated to Kylie's case, investigators saw the charges as part of a broader portrait of household dynamics. The presence of unlicensed guns raised questions about safety standards and the general environment inside the property. For Paige, these charges were more than a legal issue. They represented what she viewed as a larger pattern, one where rules were ignored, warnings were dismissed, and concerns lingered unaddressed. Each new detail that emerged seemed to reinforce her long-standing fears about the risks facing the children connected to the home. Local parents followed the story closely, identifying with Paige's desire to protect her children. Many expressed sympathy, acknowledging the tremendous emotional burden carried by someone who tried to alert authorities months before tragedy struck. Her persistence demonstrated how deeply she believed danger had been escalating. As public discussions continued, some community members questioned what additional tools DCFS may need when concerns arise about adopted children. Without ongoing monitoring, any new risk depends on outside reports. And if those reports aren't escalated quickly, families like Kylie's may fall through systemic gaps. Advocates began calling for more flexible protocols that account for informal living arrangements, like the RV setup described by Paige. These non-traditional structures can shield potentially harmful situations from official observation, making it harder for agencies to detect and assess risks in time. Meanwhile, investigators worked diligently to reconstruct the final timeline, reviewing interviews, call records, and testimonies. Rivera's alleged confession became a critical piece of the narrative, helping establish what may have unfolded and how quickly events escalated in the household during Kylie's final hours. Paige's voice remained a driving force. Her willingness to revisit painful memories, share difficult truths, and confront her past with Rivera gave investigators valuable context. She hoped her transparency would help ensure that no part of Kylie's experience remained hidden or misunderstood. At the same time, authorities emphasized the importance of patience. Investigations of this complexity often require months of careful work, especially when multiple family members, legal histories, and household settings intertwine. Accuracy, they said, must outweigh speed when dealing with a case of this gravity. Still, the community's desire for answers only intensified. Many residents attended town meetings to voice concerns and propose reforms. They argued that when children express fear or discomfort, even indirectly, it should trigger more thorough, immediate reviews rather than standard procedural handling. Local leaders echoed these concerns, encouraging residents to speak up when something feels wrong. They emphasized that community vigilance remains a crucial safeguard, especially in rural areas where agencies may be understaffed or stretched thin. As the investigation progressed, Donna Toberman's legal proceedings moved forward independently. Though misdemeanors, her charges served as a reminder that the environment surrounding Kylie was under renewed scrutiny. Each new hearing kept the case in public view and reinforced calls for greater accountability. Reporters continued covering developments closely, balancing compassion with accuracy. Their reporting helped keep the focus on Kylie, ensuring her story remained central as the case expanded into multiple legal and investigative threads. Paige said she hoped her involvement would inspire others to speak out earlier when concerns arise, even if fear or uncertainty makes doing so difficult. She believed that listening closely to children and taking their concerns seriously could become a community's strongest defense against future tragedies. For investigators, the coming months would involve synthesizing everything gathered: statements, physical evidence, environmental context, and digital trails. Their challenge was not only to determine what happened, but to understand the broader setting that allowed risk to grow unnoticed. Despite the case's complexity, one message remained clear. Kylie's story would not fade quietly. Her memory became a symbol for families who felt unseen, unheard, or left behind by the very systems designed to protect them. As authorities continued their work, the community held on to hope that truth would emerge fully. Whether through legal proceedings, investigative updates, or policy discussions, residents wanted assurance that lessons would be learned and applied to prevent similar tragedies. Part 4 closes with the community united in grief, reflection, and determination. The investigation into Kylie Toberman's final months remains active, driven by the voices of those demanding answers. What comes next will shape not only the case's outcome, but how future warnings are recognized and acted upon. As the investigation into Kylie Toberman's final months continues, one truth remains clear. Her story has stirred an entire community. From the unanswered warnings to the questions surrounding household dynamics, the case reveals how fragile protection systems can be when signs are overlooked or dismissed. Kylie's memory now stands as a reminder of why vigilance, transparency, and communication matter. For many in Vandalia, this tragedy has become a call to action. Families, advocates, and community members are speaking more openly about the importance of reporting concerns, listening closely to children, and ensuring their voices are never lost in bureaucracy. Kylie's story has sparked difficult conversations that may help prevent future heartbreak. As investigators move forward, the hope is that every detail will contribute to understanding what truly happened and what changes need to be made. Those who knew Kylie, along with those who tried to protect her, continue to push for answers. Their commitment reflects a shared belief that her life deserves truth, accountability, and lasting impact. Thank you for watching Crime Wisp. If you want to follow every update in the Kylie Toberman case and stay informed about other ongoing investigations, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps bring attention to silent warnings, hidden risks, and the stories that deserve to be heard. Stay aware, stay compassionate, and join us as we continue seeking truth one case at a time.